I need to be hospitalized for a while. So could you take care of Rhonda while I undergo my surgery? I know it might be hard to visit every day, but it'll only be for about 10 days at most. Could you please do this for me? That's not possible. I already have plans. Plans, shopping, and hanging out with friends, stuff like that. Can't you work something out? I know I'm asking a lot, but I really need your help. No way. Rhonda is just a stranger to me. Canceling my plans and going out of my way to take care of a stranger. Not happening. I understand it was sudden and unreasonable of me to make such a request, so being refused was fair. However, I couldn't accept the reason or the attitude behind it. In hindsight, I feel relieved I didn't entrust Rhonda to her. I thought Fred, my brother-in-law, should step in and say something, but it seems he spoils her because he's afraid of upsetting his wife. Even though Fred is family, it doesn't feel right to meddle too much in someone else's household. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if leaving things as they were was really okay. Apparently, it wasn't. Rhonda secretly had $4 million saved up. So we're splitting it, right? That's $1 million each, isn't it? This is seriously amazing. When everyone gathered, Samantha was the only one whose excitement was noticeably over the top. Her enthusiasm was so unrestrained that it was hard to believe she was attending a memorial service. But I suppose her reaction was understandable. It had been revealed that Rhonda had left behind $4 million. Samantha was likely envisioning all the ways she could spend her share, her dreams expanding with every thought. But those dreams wouldn't come true. In fact, she was in for a major disappointment. My name is Danielle. I'm 48 years old and work part-time. My husband, Patrick, is an average office worker. We have a daughter who recently graduated from college, started a job, and moved out. Now, it's just me, my husband, and my mother-in-law, Rhonda, living together. Hearing about living with a mother-in-law might make you think of constant conflicts, but in our case, there's none of that, and Rhonda and I have a great relationship. Rhonda, shall we go grocery shopping? I'd just slow you down if I came along. We're only walking to the local supermarket, and I don't think of you that way at all. Let's take the scenic route through the park today, as usual. Going grocery shopping together, often as part of a leisurely walk, has become a daily routine for us. I walk slowly to match Rhonda's pace, making sure she doesn't trip or get into any accidents. We often meet neighbors on the way to the supermarket. For us, the so-called mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is non-existent. My husband also has a brother, Fred, with whom we get along well. I believe there was no potential for problems in our lives. However, things started to shift slightly after Fred got married 3 years ago. The catalyst for this may have been the passing of my father-in-law 4 years ago. My in-laws had originally lived together as a couple. Due to their age, my husband and I, along with the still single Fred, had suggested that they move in with us. However, my in-laws stubbornly refused, likely thinking it would be an inconvenience to us, and continued to live on their own. In hindsight, we probably should have tried harder to convince them. They seemed financially comfortable and were able to rely on welfare services and private options like housework assistance, so their lifestyle appeared manageable. As a result, my husband, Fred, and I compromised by visiting them regularly to check in. But with my father-in-law gone, it was no longer a situation where compromises would suffice. We proposed again that Rhonda move in with us. Rhonda, living alone, has to be too much now. I don't think so. No, it is. That's right. Everyone is worried about you, Rhonda. Do you think living with us would be a burden? None of us feel that way. In fact, We're more worried about you being on your own." "I see. Is that so?" Initially, Rhonda seemed intent on declining. She thought she could manage on her own because of the money my father-in-law had left behind. Since my husband had also inherited a portion of that money, we had a rough idea of how much Rhonda had at her disposal. Indeed, it was a substantial amount, enough that she wouldn't face financial difficulties. My in-laws had once been large landowners in the area, owning much of the surrounding land. However, during the post-war agricultural reforms, those lands were converted into agricultural bonds. The value of those bonds plummeted due to the rapid post-war development of infrastructure, leaving them nearly worthless. Even so, the amount had been significant for its time. Still, there are aspects of life in old age that money alone can't address. After persistently convincing her, Rhonda finally agreed to move in with us. Once Rhonda was on board, the next question was whether she would live with us or with Fred. The decision was reached quickly. Fred has work and can't take care of Mom alone. "We'll live together with you, Mom." "That's true, but are you okay with it?" "Danielle." "Me, I don't mind at all. I think our daughter will be fine with it too." "I see. In that case, I'll leave Mom to you, Patrick. I'll stop by to check on her occasionally. Let me know if you need help with anything." At that time, Fred was still single, so it was naturally decided that we would live with Rhonda since supporting her on his own would be difficult for him. We moved into my in-laws' house, and our life as a family of 4, my husband, daughter, Rhonda, and I began. Fred would also visit occasionally to check on Rhonda. Things went well up to that point, but about a year after Rhonda moved in, the situation began to change. "Fred is getting married. Congratulations. I thought you'd live alone forever. This is such relief." "Was it that surprising that I'm getting married?" "Surprising doesn't even begin to cover it." Fred suddenly announced he was getting married. They started dating a month after meeting and got married within 3 months, a whirlwind romance. Since Fred was already in his 50s, things likely moved quickly. We'd never heard Fred talk about romance before, so the whole family was shocked. But that wasn't the only surprising part. "This is Samantha, the woman I'm marrying. Nice to meet you." Later, Fred brought his fiancée to our house to formally introduce her to Rhonda. We'd heard about her beforehand, but seeing her in person stunned us even more. She looked so young that if Fred had introduced her as his daughter, we might have believed him. At 30 years old, she was over 20 years younger than him. On top of the age difference, her flashy appearance felt a bit unusual for someone coming to make a formal introduction. When I greeted them at the door, I couldn't help but wonder if everything was going to be okay. However, my worries quickly dissipated. "Rhonda, it looks like we're out of coffee. I'll go get a new batch. Patrick's tea is gone too. Let me help." "You're a guest, Samantha. Please, just have a seat." "Thank you so much. I appreciate it." Samantha was polite and cheerful, and she blended in with us immediately. Fred, seeing this, wore a proud expression the entire time. Soon after, Fred and Samantha got married and started their life together. Even after their marriage, Fred continued to visit to check on Rhonda, and Samantha would occasionally join him. "Rhonda, how about going on a walk with me today? You'll join me on my walk." "Thank you so much. Danielle, take your time with your shopping." "Thank you, Samantha." My relationship with Samantha was also amicable. We were thrilled to have gained another beloved family member. 3 years passed. Our daughter graduated from university, got a job, and moved out. It was now just my husband, Rhonda, and me living together. Around this time, an unsettling air began to creep into our lives. Fred still visited regularly to check on Rhonda. Over the last 3 years, though, Samantha's visits had become less frequent, and now she only showed up around Christmas time. Of course, no one was obligated to visit, so it's entirely Samantha's choice whether she came or not. However, her change in behavior didn't go unnoticed, and we couldn't help but feel concerned. Samantha hasn't been visiting at all lately, I remarked. I keep inviting her, but she always says she has plans. Fred replied. Plans? What kind of plans? Samantha quit her job after getting married. Right. Yay, it's usually shopping or hanging out with friends. Can you even call that plans? Whether she visits us or not is one thing, but is she at least managing things at home properly? Well, let's just say she does the bare minimum. I know it's not really my place to say this, but maybe you should pay more attention to how she spends her money and time. I've thought about it, but it feels awkward to bring up. Is that really okay? Well, to be honest, she's been like this since before we got married. I figure it's normal for a husband to help out with household chores. Don't worry about it. Although we were trying to give sincere advice, Fred always dismissed it with an awkward laugh. It was obvious he doted on his much younger wife. He also seemed scared of upsetting her and had taken to spoiling her. Considering that he finally got married at 50, I could somewhat understand his perspective. Besides, even though Fred is family, meddling too much in someone else's household is never a good idea. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't sustainable. When January came, that feeling only grew stronger. Why do people always feel the need to gather at their parents' house in January? There are so many fun things going on, sales, events, everything. Isn't it ridiculous to just stay cooped up at home during such an exciting time? Hey, Danielle, why don't we ditch this and go shopping instead? Samantha said with a laugh. What are you talking about? Here, take this dish. There's quite a bit to carry, so get my husband and Fred to help, I replied, handing her a tray. Danielle, you're so serious. You'd enjoy life more if you loosened up a bit, you know. I laughed off Samantha's comment as a joke, but deep down, I was thinking, what on earth is she saying? Over the past 3 years, my trust in Samantha had dwindled significantly. She seemed to want to distance herself from our family as well. I started to think it might be better to keep our relationship at arm's length for now, rather than trying to force closeness. But maintaining that distance led to an unexpected issue. Ouch. Hey, are you okay? I might not be. At some point, I started feeling pain around my upper abdomen. The pain grew steadily worse until it was unbearable. After seeing a doctor, I got the diagnosis. I have gallstones and need to have surgery to remove them. Are you serious? Are you going to be okay? The surgery isn't complicated, and they said I'll recover fully. Fortunately, the condition was treatable with surgery, and it wouldn't have a significant impact on my daily life afterward. But my mind was occupied with a different concern. I might have to be hospitalized for about a week to 10 days. If I'm in a hospital, Rhonda will be alone during the day while you're at work, and that worries me. Yay, you're right. Knowing Rhonda, she'll probably insist she's fine for 10 days, but with her mobility issues, I'd still be worried. Everyone else has work, so Samantha is the only person we can rely on, isn't she? That's true. I'll ask Fred to see if Samantha can stop by during the day while you're in the hospital. Do you think she'll agree? Given the circumstances, I think she will. All right. In that case, I'll call Samantha myself and explain the situation. It's my health issue, so it's better coming from me. Got it. I'll let Fred know what's going on. The following day, I called Samantha. As my husband had said, there was no way she would turn me down under these circumstances. When you're in trouble, you help each other. I would help Samantha if she needed it. That was the right thing to do, I told myself. Hello, Samantha. Yes, what's up? Is this about your hospitalization? And Rhonda. So Fred already told you. Yes, that's right. I need to have surgery and will be in the hospital for a bit. So I was wondering if you could check on Rhonda while I'm away. I know it's a big ask to come by every day, but it's only for about 10 days at most. That's not going to work. I already have plans. Plans, shopping and meeting friends, stuff like that. Could you maybe reconsider? I know I'm asking a lot, but it's important. No way. I mean, she's just my husband's mom, basically a stranger. Why should I cancel my plans and go out of my way to do something so inconvenient for someone who's not even family to me? I see. Well, if that's how it is, then I understand. Sorry for asking. No problem. Good luck with the surgery. While I understood that it was a sudden and inconvenient request, her reasoning and attitude were hard to accept. I started to feel uneasy about relying on Samantha for anything involving Rhonda and decided to drop the matter. In the end, my husband arranged for a temporary home care helper to assist Rhonda during the week I'd be in the hospital. Leaving Rhonda's care in his hands, I underwent the surgery. The operation went smoothly, and I was able to return home in a week. As soon as I returned home from the hospital, Fred came over. Danielle, Mom, I'm really sorry about everything that happened this time. It's fine. Honestly, I could have managed on my own, but you went out of your way to arrange a helper for us. And you even covered the cost, didn't you? Thank you. I don't have any complaints either, since Rhonda was okay with the arrangement. But putting this incident aside, I think you really need to have a proper talk with Samantha. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'll try talking to her. Fred's tone was weak and unconvincing. It sounded like he might bring it up, but only in the vaguest terms. Though I didn't voice it, I wished he'd be firmer about this. In any case, my hospitalization ended without issue, and our daily lives returned to normal. For a while, I thought we could finally relax, but that peace didn't last long. A few months later, Rhonda fell seriously ill. While her life was spared, she was hospitalized indefinitely. Visiting her at the hospital became part of my daily routine. Rhonda, are you feeling okay? My back hurts a little. Could you help me move? I gently adjusted her frail body, which now felt lighter than before. She couldn't even get out of bed on her own anymore. A few days later, on my way to Rhonda's hospital room, as usual, I ran into Fred in the hallway. Oh, Fred, you're here. Yeah, I came with Samantha earlier, but Rhonda was asleep, and while I was waiting, I had to use the restroom. Samantha's still in the room. Samantha came too. Well, with Rhonda being in this condition, I had to drag her along. Together, we headed toward Rhonda's room. From outside, we could hear Samantha's voice. Huh, could Mom be awake? Samantha doesn't get much time to talk to Rhonda, so why don't we wait a little? Fred and I stood by the door, listening to Samantha speak from inside. From then on, I continued visiting Rhonda daily. Then, a year after she was hospitalized, Rhonda passed away. My husband, Fred, our daughter, and I wept before her. The funeral was a small, private affair attended only by close family. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, but its simplicity only deepened the sadness we felt. After the service concluded and we prepared to head to the crematorium, my husband and I chatted briefly with some relatives outside the venue. As they walked away, Fred approached us, his expression a mixture of sorrow and confusion that was difficult to describe. Are you all right? Is something bothering you? No, it's nothing. It's just, having the funeral makes it sink in that Rhonda's really gone. Yay, it's tough, but we're also busy now. Once things settle down after the funeral, it'll probably hit even harder. Don't say things like that, I said, half joking. You're making me anxious. We tried to comfort each other by talking, sharing our grief, confusion, and sadness. Samantha, as expected, was nowhere to be seen among us. Looking around, I finally spotted her near the altar. For a moment, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was mourning Rhonda in her own way. But that thought was quickly dismissed. Rhonda had $4 million hidden away. Samantha exclaimed loudly, her voice betraying her excitement. So we're splitting it evenly, right? That's $1 million each. Oh my gosh, this is insane. Her mood was jarringly upbeat, completely at odds with the solemn atmosphere of the funeral. It was clear she wasn't here for the ceremony. Her true interest lay elsewhere. To be fair, it wasn't entirely surprising. The revelation that Rhonda had amassed $4 million in assets was shocking to all of us. Samantha's head was likely spinning with daydreams of how to spend her imagined windfall. But that dream would not come true. In fact, it turned out even worse than she expected. Samantha, oblivious to the somber mood, continued to chatter enthusiastically, ignoring everyone's expressions. Hey, how did Rhonda end up with more money than father-in-law? Isn't it usually the man who has the bigger fortune? Could it be that Rhonda was secretly some kind of femme fatale who transferred father-in-law's assets into her name? That's absurd, Fred interjected, sounding both annoyed and exasperated. I told you before, didn't I? Our family were major landowners before the war. That legacy came from Rhonda's side, not Dad's. Dad was the one who married into Mom's family. Right, they were only rich before the war. Right, after the land reforms, did not they lose most of their wealth? You're thinking of the Land Reform Act. The farmland they owned was bought out cheaply, and the value of agricultural bonds plummeted during post-war inflation. So how did she end up with $4 million? Apparently, they sold the land for about $100,000. It wasn't much considering the size of the property, but at the time, $100,000 was a fortune. And Rhonda invested that money. Invested in stocks or something. No, she invested in gold. Gold. You mean gold. Yay. Back then, gold was just over $1 per gram. $1 per gram. Gold's over $100 per gram now. Exactly. Add in the money Dad left, Rhonda's savings, and the value of this house, and it all comes to $4 million. Samantha was impressed to learn that Rhonda had $4 million. However, Samantha's interest wasn't in how Rhonda had accumulated that amount of money, but in getting her hands on it and how she could spend it. Her expression shifted quickly from interest to a big smile. So the $4 million is getting split evenly, right? I'm already planning how I'll spend my million. You're not even in line to inherit anything, Fred said bluntly. Of course I know that, Samantha replied dismissively. Technically, the inheritance goes to you and Patrick, doesn't it? But since your money is our money, that means it's basically mine too. What the? That's just your selfish logic. Actually, the money isn't just being split between me and Patrick. Rhonda left a will. A will. So there are others inheriting. Yeah, the will states it should be divided 3 ways between me, Patrick, and Danielle. Danielle. Samantha's voice rose in disbelief. Why? Danielle has no right to inherit anything, just like me. It was a gesture of gratitude for the care Danielle gave her. That's ridiculous. You need to contest this. Without that, your share drops from half to a third. Do you even realize how much less that is? Speak up, Fred. I'm fine with it. Fred said calmly. What? Why? Someone else is taking your money, you know. Danielle isn't someone else. She was good to Rhonda. Besides, this is what Rhonda wanted. I'm not going to fight it. You're hopeless. Samantha spat, turning to Patrick. What about you? Your mother's money will end up in the hands of someone else's wife. That's Rhonda's money, and it'll be spent however she likes. Aren't you angry? Patrick leaned back, his arms crossed. Do you plan to waste Rhonda's money, Samantha? Spend it recklessly? Of course not. I'd put it in our joint account, obviously. I don't understand why you two are so indifferent about money. Samantha scoffed. It makes no sense. To be honest, I chimed in. I can't understand why you're so fixated on money and material things. Aren't there more important things in life? Nothing's more important than money. With money, you can do almost anything. Samantha smiled smugly. Anyway, at least a third of it will go to Fred. As his wife, I'll manage it. So don't even think about touching it. Samantha acted as though she were doing us a favor, expecting us to be grateful. Just a moment ago, she had said that the inheritance would be split into 4 equal parts, and she was planning to take $1 million for herself. But now, she was aiming to take the entire sum that would go to Fred, an extra $300,000. This wasn't exactly a compromise, was it? Her greed was showing, and it was this very behavior that led to Fred eventually losing his patience. Manage it, as his wife. That won't be necessary, Fred said firmly. What? Don't get cocky, Fred. Remember, I married someone 20 years older than me. You've been lucky to have me. Do you really want a divorce? Think carefully before ignoring me. So, if I refuse to listen to you, we're getting divorced? Fred asked. That's right. You wouldn't want to lose a wife 20 years younger, would you? Good, Fred said without hesitation. Because I've been wanting a divorce too. I won't listen to you anymore. That settles it, then. What? Samantha's confidence faltered. Fred has known all along that you only married him for money, I said, watching her pale. He couldn't bring himself to divorce you before, but now he's had enough. Known all along. What are you talking about? Do you remember when Rhonda was in the hospital? After she collapsed. You came with Fred a few days later. When we arrived at the hospital, Rhonda was asleep, and we had to wait until she woke up. Do you remember when Fred went to the bathroom? I met him in the hallway, and we walked back to the room together. But then I heard your voice coming from inside. You're being persistent, then I thought. You also said, hurry up and just leave the money. And let's not forget, die already and leave me the money. You knew how much I'd inherited from my father, and that my mother had a lot of money too, didn't you? You must have expected that. But the $4 million was beyond what you imagined, wasn't it? You were pretending at first to get married, weren't you? But when Rhonda stayed healthy longer than you thought, you couldn't keep up the act, and you started getting frustrated. You even insulted her while she was sleeping, didn't you? That's a misunderstanding. Samantha stammered. You misheard. I was saying, get well soon. That's a lie, I replied flatly. How can you say that so confidently? Samantha demanded. Because Rhonda told me herself, I said. She was awake at the time. She pretended to be asleep because she feared you might harm her if you realized she was listening. That old woman. Pretending to be asleep. Even at the funeral, in front of the altar, I continued. You apparently said. Finally, she's gone. How do you know that? I heard it. Patrick and Danielle were talking to relatives when I was near the altar. I overheard you, who didn't notice me, throwing insults at my mom. Your behavior toward Rhonda. Your attitude about the money and marriage. If anyone had found out, you should have been asked for a divorce right then and there. But it seems Fred had a hard time making up his mind. However, after seeing how you no longer even bother to hide your true self in front of us, Fred reached his limit. That's right, I can't take it anymore. So I'm getting a divorce. Wait, I don't want a divorce, Samantha cried. Really? I asked, surprised. But didn't you just say that if Fred didn't listen to you, you'd get a divorce? And didn't I say, I won't listen? Yup, I heard him say that too. We'll be witnesses to this, I added. Please, no. Samantha's voice wavered, realizing her words were turning against her. All right, Fred said, standing up. Now let's talk among the family. You can leave. Samantha glanced at us, and when she realized there was no point in arguing, she slowly stood up. Her steps were shaky as she left the house without another word. Soon after, my brother-in-law and his wife, Samantha, divorced. Of course, Rhonda's inheritance wasn't part of the settlement. They had been married for less than 5 years, so the assets were minimal, and Samantha reportedly walked away with only a few $1,000s. Even that small amount, though, was better than nothing. Still, it was hardly enough for someone used to depending on others. Samantha had no personal savings, and had even quit her job when she married Fred, relying on his income. The 5-year gap in her work history was a huge setback, but given her youth, she'd probably find work again. I just hoped she would stop depending on other people's money and learn to stand on her own. Fred apologized to us after the divorce. I'm really sorry. I wish I had made a decision sooner. If I had, we wouldn't have had to deal with all the unpleasantness, and neither Rhonda or the two of you would have had to suffer. He seemed to regret not divorcing Samantha earlier. If he had, we wouldn't have felt awkward about the inheritance, and he wouldn't have had to overhear the cruel things Samantha said in the hospital. I wasn't bothered by it, though. Neither was my husband, but I couldn't help but wonder what Rhonda might have thought about all of this. We would never know. As I was lost in thought, my husband stood up and walked toward the back of the house, returning moments later with a letter in his hand. This letter. Mom asked me to hold on to it. A letter from Mom? Fred asked, surprised. Yeah. She asked me to give it to you if you ever divorced. I didn't know she had written such a letter. What does it say? I don't know. She never told me, my husband replied. He handed the letter to Fred, who opened it with a look of uncertainty. The letter was a shock to Fred. It mentioned how Rhonda had been deeply disappointed by Samantha's actions, especially the way she spent money from her father-in-law and the cruel words she had spoken in the hospital. But Rhonda also expressed her happiness about the kindness that my husband, Fred, and I had shown, as well as how she appreciated Fred's regular visits to check on her. In the end, Rhonda wrote that the love and support from family far outweighed the negativity, and that Fred shouldn't worry about her. When Fred finished reading, he carefully folded the letter and bowed his head in front of the family altar.
You can't live without a man. You're a useless wife who can't do anything on your own. Don't get too comfortable. My name is Isabel. I'm a 29-year-old homemaker. I live in a multi-generational home with my husband Mark's family. Originally, Mark's grandparents lived on the first floor and his grandmother on the second. But after she passed away and his grandfather moved to a nursing home, the second floor became vacant. My mother-in-law decided to renovate it for Mark without asking us. I had already retired and we planned to rent an apartment and live there while I worked part-time. But mother-in-law strongly opposed this, begging Mark, "Please don't leave an old woman behind," while crying. She calls herself old, but she's only in her mid-50s. And my father-in-law is still working. Yet, She cried like she was the tragic heroine of a story. Mark, who had always been bothered by his mother's meddling, initially refused to live with her. But considering his work commute and our future savings, we agreed to live there on the condition that she wouldn't interfere in our marriage. Sharing an entrance was a bit awkward, but we thought it wouldn't be a big deal since the bathroom, toilet, and kitchen were separate. We decided to make the best of it. But it turned out to be a sham. Mother-in-law came over every day. From morning till night. Doing nothing but being there. And always making snide comments. Mark has a sister who lives 30 minutes away by car and claims to be a career woman. She also came over every weekend, acting arrogantly towards me and complaining with mother-in-law. Each time, I told myself, I'm in customer service, and mother-in-law and Tiana are difficult customers. I had to keep reminding myself, or else I'd go crazy. Eventually, Mark reached his limit and scolded mother-in-law and Tiana. Mother-in-law went silent, sniffled, and retreated to her room. And Tiana blamed only me, saying it was pitiful for her mother. Father-in-law came to check on us, but Mark said, Just leave it, Dad. You handle Mom. Mother-in-law always acted like this. Every time Mark scolded her, she would dramatically sulk and lock herself in her room. She was waiting for Mark to say something kind. But Mark never did. This farce happened quite often. I'm sorry, maybe this decision was a mistake after all. Mark's support made it easier for me to endure the situation. In the neighborhood, there's a middle school student named Jake who's related to Mark's family. He and Mark have been close for years, and recently, Mark has been tutoring him at home on weekends. Despite being scolded by Mark, mother-in-law and Tiana still tried to snoop on their study sessions. But Jake would bluntly say, You're interrupting. During a study break, Tiana started bragging and then said, Maybe I should start dating without being so picky. Jake flatly responded, That's impossible because you have a bad personality. Unfazed by Tiana's irritation, he continued to put her in her place. I'm leaving. I feel sick. I have a class to attend. Tiana stormed out, shouting, It's a Spanish class, as she stomped down the stairs. Gradually, Tiana started avoiding Jake and stopped coming over. He had successfully repelled her. Later, Jake told me, Those people used to harass my mom. They even picked on my girlfriend recently. I like Mark, but I can't stand them. I felt oddly satisfied and thanked him. Life was comfortable for a while since Mark had blocked mother-in-law and Tiana stopped visiting. But then tragedy struck. Mark received orders for a 3-month solo assignment far away. I was devastated but had no choice but to accept the company's decision. It can't be helped if it's a company order. I suppressed my gloom and saw Mark off with a smile. The next day, I was jolted awake by the sound of someone rushing up the stairs. Mother-in-law was standing in my bedroom, looking very self-assured. Isabel! How long are you going to laze around? What? I checked the clock, it was only 3 a.m. Isabel, don't think you can slack off just because Mark is away. Starting today, I'll be giving you a thorough education. What are you talking about? Annoyed at being woken up, I resisted, and a heated argument ensued. Come downstairs and start with our housework. Mother-in-law left, but I had no intention of complying with her unreasonable demands. As dawn broke, mother-in-law returned, this time with Tiana. You think you can defy us? You've been too comfortable because Mark was here. But now it's just you, Isabel. And that bratty kid won't be coming either. You married into this family, so you have no choice but to obey us. I was about to ignore Tiana's smirking face and her early morning harassment, when mother-in-law's next words suddenly changed my mind. "You're a stupid woman who can't live without a man. If you don't like it, that's fine. I'll spread the word that you're a useless wife who can't do anything on her own." Those words fueled my competitive spirit. "Fine, let's see if I can go 3 months without a single complaint from you." From then on, I woke up at 3 a.m. to spite mother-in-law and took care of the chores in her part of the house. While I was stuck doing all the cleaning, laundry, meal prep, and cleanup, mother-in-law did nothing but complain about each task. "The vacuum is too loud. The kitchen noise keeps me awake," she'd say, even though she was the one who woke me up at 3 a.m. and then slept until almost noon. "I can't sleep because of the noise from your bedroom," she'd add, reminding me of the creepy complaints she'd made when we first moved in. Though I'd started doing this out of spite, the constant work from early morning to late night was harder than I'd thought. I couldn't afford to think waking up at 3 a.m. was tough. I had friends who were sleep-deprived from newborns or woke up at 5 a.m. to make lunch for their kids before going to a part-time job. If you think I'm the only one having a hard time, you're wrong. I was still naive. If I woke up early, I could go to bed early. There was nothing I couldn't do. But mother-in-law wouldn't let me. In the afternoon, just as I was about to rest before grocery shopping, she'd barge in saying, "I'm into aerobics now," and start some bizarre routine with the DVD player at full volume. At night, she'd find fault with the cleanliness of our living space, refusing to let me rest even after midnight. The more I tried, the more mother-in-law escalated her harassment. Tiana started coming over every night for dinner, criticizing my cooking while eating everything. Seeing Tiana's already voluptuous figure expand while I was losing weight from lack of sleep was almost enough to break me. "Do you think Mark found a girlfriend over there? That would be interesting. I hope he finds someone younger and more charming next time. I want to hold a cute grandchild." I agree. Any child from this current wife wouldn't be cute. Listening to them joyfully badmouth me, I lost the energy to argue. I wanted to tell Mark, but he was also working hard. If he had to listen to constant complaints between his wife and mother, he might get fed up and actually start cheating. I couldn't bear the thought of losing Mark. That's why I never spoke up about anything. One day, a parade of contractors started showing up at my mother-in-law's house. They brought in new appliances like rice cookers, washing machines, and microwaves, as well as furniture like dining tables and beds. "It's all getting pretty old, so I decided to replace everything," my mother-in-law announced, flashing an envelope in front of me. My eyes widened. That was the money I had carefully tucked away in my bedroom drawer. "How dare you secretly save money from my son's earnings? And those tacky undergarments, how disgraceful." I couldn't believe my ears. "Did you go through my bedroom?" Unashamed, she replied. "Don't make it sound so bad. I was just helping Isabel with the cleaning," laughing as she spoke. I was trembling with a mix of disgust and anger. That money wasn't secretly saved, it was a fund, Mark. And I had been building together for emergencies. I couldn't forgive her, not just for invading my privacy, but for stealing from me. "Mother-in-law, this is a crime," she scoffed. "Crime? Within family? Don't be dramatic. We're letting you live here. Think of it as a gift for your parents." Just then, I saw my father-in-law, who usually turns a blind eye to her snide remarks, trying to sneak away. Our eyes met, and he mumbled something under his breath as he left. My mother-in-law looked at me triumphantly. "Oh, by the way, next week is our wedding anniversary. We've invited some relatives, about 15 people. It'll be fun." Isabel, make sure you entertain them well so I don't get embarrassed. I was so frustrated that I ran upstairs and cried where no one could hear me. Am I really as useless as my mother-in-law and Tiana say, unable to do anything on my own? I blamed myself for a moment, but after crying for a while, I found my own stubbornness ridiculous. Why am I crying over what these people say? That's when I decided to take refuge at my parents' house until Mark returned. When I told Mark, he scolded me for keeping silent for so long. He also apologized to me repeatedly. When I told him I planned to move out the next day, Mark made a suggestion, and I immediately decided to act on it. The next morning, I started by apologizing to my mother-in-law. While my mother-in-law gloated and made snide remarks, I calmly went about my chores. When she took her afternoon nap, I contacted the relatives we'd invited. I then gifted my in-laws a 3-day, 2-night trip voucher, saying it was from Mark. Mark will be back for the celebration. You can relax until the day, and we'll have everything ready for a grand celebration when you return. My mother-in-law was thrilled, flipping through the travel brochure. Tiana, realizing she'd be alone with me, decided not to visit during that time. This allowed me to prepare in peace. Once my in-laws left for their trip, the movers arrived and efficiently cleared out their belongings. Around that time, Jake and Katie happened to pass by the house. We exchanged nods, and Katie and I shared a knowing smile. After all the work was done, I booked a room in a business hotel and called Mark, who said he was on his way. I couldn't wait for him to get back. That evening, both our phones started buzzing with calls from my mother-in-law. After ignoring several, I finally took a deep breath and answered. What is the meaning of this? Explain yourself. Ignoring her shrill voice, I calmly said, We'll be right there. And hung up. Mark and I nodded to each other, held hands, and headed to my in-laws' house. As soon as she saw me, my mother-in-law lunged at me, but Mark held her back as we entered. The living room was barren, not even a table or TV, and all the relatives were already there. What is this? You're making me look bad. What have you done on such an important day? Nobody was upstairs. Mark, this woman did something terrible while we were gone. Leave her now. My mother-in-law and Tiana were screaming, ignoring the relatives, while my father-in-law just stood there silently. This was a decision made by both Isabel and me. We're not coming back here, Mark declared. My mother-in-law lunged at me again. Isabel, you've corrupted my son. You thief, taking our stuff. Mark restrained her, but as she tried to lunge at me again, I calmly said, Thief? Who's the real thief here? That was money Mark and I had saved. You rummaged through our home and used that stolen money. If you have anything to say, we can file a police report for theft and you can explain yourself there. Then Ellie muttered, Wow, stealing money? That's low. Mother-in-law quickly turned toward the voice and blurted out, No, you got it all wrong. My daughter-in-law gave that to me. She's just trying to set me up. Exactly. Who harasses their mother-in-law on such an important celebration? It's obvious who's lying here. But no one reacted, and an awkward silence filled the room. Isabel! Apologize right now. You've ruined an important celebration. Apologize deeply in front of everyone. As mother-in-law grabbed my head and tried to force me to kneel, Katie spoke up. I think there's a misunderstanding. We're not here to celebrate an anniversary. Mother-in-law froze at those words. What? What are you talking about? As Tiana glared at Katie, Tilda, who was standing nearby, said with a smile. We're actually here to celebrate Mark and his wife moving out, or rather, escaping. Why would we celebrate an anniversary for someone who gathered us all here just to harass Isabel? How dare you say that, Isabel? What have you told these people? Mother-in-law glared at me, her eyes filled with rage. Katie then said, Do you think we're oblivious? The whole neighborhood sees Isabel working hard from early morning. And you and Tiana have been, let's say, quite helpful to me as well. It's easy to imagine what you've done to Isabel. Everyone here has had their own experiences with you and Tiana. The other relatives nodded in agreement. What? Don't talk about me and my mom as if we're terrible people, Tiana shouted. Jake retorted. Not as if. You are terrible people. Haven't you noticed you're pretty disliked? What kind of language is that? You little brat. I never even called for Jake. Tiana shrieked and lunged at Jake, but several people held her back. Mark, you can't be serious about leaving too. Just let the wife leave. Don't be fooled by her. You're a kind and considerate person. She must have brainwashed you. Please, come back. In the midst of the chaos between Tiana and Jake, mother-in-law clung to Mark. But Mark firmly pulled away from mother-in-law and said, I'll say it again. Don't ever come back here. While looking her straight in the eyes. Mother-in-law then exclaimed, How cruel! How cruel! And ran into the bedroom, covering her face with both hands. As the door slammed shut, we heard mother-in-law scream, The bed! The bed is gone! I told mother-in-law, who wasn't shedding a tear. That's because they reclaimed what you bought with stolen money. I couldn't help but be amazed as I said it. To mother-in-law, who was standing there with her mouth agape, I said, This is my anniversary gift to you. I handed mother-in-law the anniversary gift and said, Please open it. Mother-in-law tore open the gift and yelled, What is this? It's a boomerang. You know, what goes around comes around. Bad words and deeds always come back to you. Always. I smiled at mother-in-law as I said this. Mother-in-law threw the boomerang on the floor and started screeching. Father-in-law didn't say a word throughout this whole ordeal. After that, we moved to Mark's new job location. Mark had requested a transfer, and it was approved. In our new home, we placed the appliances we had reclaimed from mother-in-law's house, but we immediately got rid of the bed because it felt creepy and bought a new one. Mark and Jake occasionally keep in touch, and I've also started to occasionally talk on the phone with Katie. Katie told me what happened to mother-in-law's family afterward. Tiana was secretly dating someone she met on a dating app and was thrilled to get married, but the guy turned her down the moment they met because she looked nothing like her photos. I wonder how much she edited those pictures. Tiana, who had quit her job in anticipation of getting married, couldn't pay her rent and now lives on the second floor where we used to live. And Jake, who was apparently very upset about being teased, started doing aerobics at home for weight loss. The noise is so loud that it's causing daily fights with mother-in-law, and the whole neighborhood can hear them. Mother-in-law continued to ignore her anger, but one day, a crack appeared in the floor from Jake's constant jumping, leading to the biggest fight they've ever had. But that incident led Tiana to give up on her diet, and now she's just lounging around the house doing nothing. Surprisingly, it turns out that father-in-law, who always avoided conflicts as if they had nothing to do with him, had racked up debts. To escape from the hysterical and selfish mother-in-law and Tiana, he'd been frequenting bars and lavishing gifts on young women. When mother-in-law and Tiana found out, They berated him so much that father-in-law couldn't take it anymore and left a divorce application before walking out. That's the one thing that makes me feel some sympathy for mother-in-law, considering father-in-law's utter lack of responsibility. Mother-in-law, feeling abandoned by both her son and husband, sought help from relatives, but knowing her temperament, none of them offered any assistance. Mother-in-law and Tiana, who've treated father-in-law like an ATM for years, are now without income. I wonder how they plan to survive. Well, given their mentality of expecting everything to be handed to them, they'll probably find a way to get by. One day, while Mark and I were having coffee in our new room, he said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner? You could have gone back to your parents' house instead of enduring all this." I replied, "Because it was frustrating to be told that I couldn't do anything without a man. I was relying on you and Jake and not doing anything myself." After thinking for a moment, Mark muttered, "The ones who can't live without relying on a man are those two, not you." During those tough days, I realized my homemaking skills had improved, so I started working as a housekeeper. It's surprisingly enjoyable. Of course, there are hard times, but I find true satisfaction in making people happy with what I can do. I even started getting requests for my services. Mark is supportive of my energetic work life. I've also started studying to become a certified nursing assistant through online courses, thinking about our future. Mark and I join forces. I don't want to rely solely on Mark. I want us to support each other. To protect this happiness, I'll keep moving forward, stronger than ever.
How shameless to be living off Rose. None of the family members sitting there laughed at the comment, but Rose's fiancé, Sean, chuckled as if he couldn't hold it in. Is it ever acceptable for someone you're meeting for the first time to insult your income, your job, or even your very character? And all based on assumptions they've conjured up in their mind, as if they were facts. I was stunned speechless, even. I never imagined someone as important as Rose's fiancé could say something so cruel. Instinctively, I glanced at Rose. Her face was filled with an anger I had never seen before. Next to Sean, a woman laughed along with him. But after a few seconds, Rose composed herself, took a deep breath, and spoke. "Excuse me. Amber is way richer than you." The truth, one Sean had never anticipated, shattered his expression as it gradually crumbled. "My name is Amber. I'm 40 years old and single. I live in my parents' home with Dad and Mom, the three of us together. When I was in college, I shared an apartment with friends. But after graduation, I moved back to my parents' home and have been living here ever since. My friends often told me it's important to live on your own for the experience, but I found I missed the warmth of having people around at home. And here I am, at this age. Currently, I share my artwork on social media while selling my paintings through an online store. I rent a small studio space to create and share my work. But for living, nothing beats the comfort of my parents' home." Rose is a responsible, family-oriented person. After graduating from college, she got a job at a major corporation and moved to New York to live on her own. Yet, she never grew distant from the family. She always made time to come home and reassure our parents. When I declared my ambition to make a living as an artist, my parents were worried and hesitant to agree. It was Rose who convinced them. It's your life, so she should do what makes her happy. And if it doesn't work out, I'll support her until she finds a job. If it weren't for her, I might have given up on becoming an artist. Rose is beautiful, responsible, and family-centered. I adore her. Despite living in New York, Rose had never talked to us about a boyfriend. She would always share stories about her work, amazing restaurants, and travel experiences, topics that entertained us and gave us a glimpse into her life. But about 15 years after moving out, Rose suddenly said, "I have something to tell you. Actually, I've been dating someone for about 2 years, and we're considering marriage. I'd like to introduce him to you soon." Our parents, who had hoped for Rose's marriage but never pressured her, lit up with joy. "I can't wait to see what kind of person she has chosen." The plans progressed smoothly, and a family meeting was scheduled 6 months later. When Mom told me the date was set, I felt a wave of nerves wash over me. For over 15 years, as an artist, I had been living a reclusive life in my parents' home, with little opportunity to engage in meaningful conversations with others. I didn't want the man Rose was considering marrying to think she had a weird sister. Determined to make a good impression, I decided to work on my appearance and started some light exercise and skincare routines. One day, Rose called me. "I have a favor to ask," she said. "What is it?" "You don't ask for favors often," I replied, intrigued. According to Rose, her fiancé, Sean, felt nervous and uneasy about the upcoming family meeting, especially since he hadn't even exchanged greetings with me before. He suggested meeting me beforehand to get accustomed to the idea. If I were in his position, I might have made the same request. Understanding his perspective, I gladly agreed. Since he wasn't meeting my parents, it would mean inviting him to my studio. While I considered meeting at a stylish cafe, I worried I might be too nervous there to make a good impression. So I decided to welcome Rose and Sean into my studio. In preparation, I cleaned the space as much as I could, scrubbing away oil paint stains from the floor. I also paused painting for a few days to eliminate any lingering odors. While creating art is an essential part of my daily life, this was an extraordinary occasion. I wanted to do my best to make Rose's beloved fiancé feel comfortable. When Sean arrived with Rose, I saw a man who appeared clean, polished, and slightly younger than his age. He was tall, well-dressed, and exuded the confidence of someone capable and professional. "Thank you for having us today. I appreciate you taking time out of your weekend," Sean said politely. "It's no trouble at all. I'm happy to finally meet Rose's boyfriend. I didn't expect to have the chance to chat before the family meeting. I'm Amber, Rose's younger sister." "It's nice to meet you," I replied. Honestly, the thought of the family meeting made me nervous, so I talked to Rose about meeting you first. "Thanks for agreeing to this," Sean explained. With brief pleasantries exchanged at the door, they entered my studio. "What? You live in this tiny place?" At 40 years old, Sean muttered almost immediately upon stepping inside. The comment stung, but I understood his surprise. At my age, living in a space like this would certainly be unusual. "She doesn't live here," Rose interjected firmly. "She's an artist, and this is her studio where she works on her pieces." "That's right. Sorry to surprise you. This place is perfect as a studio. It has great natural light and a nice view." "So you're an artist, I see," Sean said, nodding as though something had clicked in his mind. But his expression remained sharp, and I worried I had made a poor impression. However, Sean's demeanor shifted unexpectedly, brightening as he started chatting and sharing a meal with us. I found myself forgetting my initial unease and began looking forward to the family meeting. The day of the family meeting arrived. It was set to take place at a restaurant in New York that Rose had reserved in advance. Sean's father had passed away, so the only family member joining from his side was his mother, Ellie. Our family arrived slightly later than Sean's, and Ellie greeted us with elegance and poise. She was an older woman, yet carried herself with grace and refinement. Thank you for traveling all the way to New York today. Since my husband has passed, it's just me representing our family. I'm pleased to meet you all, Ellie said with a gentle smile. Thank you for choosing such a lovely restaurant. We've been looking forward to today. It's a pleasure to meet you. After exchanging pleasantries, we all took our seats. The dishes were exquisite, and I felt so nervous I could barely take a bite. I'd love to hear more about Sean and Rose. Yes, tell us what you like about each other, my mom added enthusiastically, sparking lively conversation between the mothers. We both work at the same company, Sean began with a smile. I was originally assigned to a department that often required overseas travel, so I didn't have much time for relationships. But when I settled into the main office, that's when I met Rose, he explained. I was curious about what kind of work kept him overseas, so I struck up a conversation, Rose added. Rose is incredibly dedicated to her job. I even heard from her supervisor that the company's significant growth in revenue was largely thanks to her. I was really drawn to her because of that. I had more or less given up on things like romance and marriage. But Sean is someone I respect deeply, both as a person and as a colleague. He caught my attention. Hearing about their wonderful relationship brought a smile to my face. But the warm atmosphere shattered in an instant. Rose is such an incredible person, and I'm convinced there's no one else I'd want to marry. But there's one thing I just can't accept, Sean said, his tone suddenly sharp. What? What do you mean? Rose asked, visibly confused. Amber, you've made it to 40 without holding down a proper job. How do you justify that? He demanded, his eyes narrowing as he turned to glare at me. The pleasant mood from moments before was entirely gone, replaced by a suffocating tension. I stammered, unable to find words. When I met Amber before, I thought it would be nice to greet her ahead of today, but I didn't expect her situation to be this bad. Hey, what do you think you're saying to my sister? Rose snapped. Calm down, Rose. She lives in that tiny, dirty room. And doesn't she take $2,000 from you every month? At Sean's accusation, Rose went quiet for a moment, clearly trying to process what she had just heard. How do you even know about that? Did you go through my financial records without asking? Rose asked, her voice filled with disbelief. I'm going to be your husband, Sean replied matter-of-factly. It's only natural to do a background check. Isn't that what anyone would do? Apparently, Sean had gone through Rose's personal belongings, including her bank account statements. Worried about misunderstandings, I tried to explain myself. I may not work as a salaried employee, but I'm not unemployed. I don't want you to think poorly of Rose because of me. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Shut up. You're just a shameless freeloader living off her. Sean spat, his voice dripping with disdain. He looked at me with a scornful gaze that made me involuntarily flinch. Enough. When we visited her studio, you didn't say anything like this. I wasn't sure back then, but now I'm waking you up to reality. Cut ties with her already. You say she's your precious sister, but all she's doing is draining money from you. Mom, clearly distraught, looked like she might cry at any moment. Dad was trembling with anger, his face flushed red. I could do nothing but stare at the table, my head hung low, unable to speak. The room was frozen in silence when suddenly the door opened and a young woman walked in. Oh, finally, Sonny's here, Sean said, his tone shifting dramatically. Wait a second. Who is this? Rose demanded, her voice rising in shock. Sean, you didn't respond to any of my messages. And I was so worried. The woman called Sonny suddenly leapt toward Sean the moment she entered the room. Everyone present was left stunned. unable to process what was unfolding before them. Sean, with a smug expression, broke the silence. Rose, so sorry, but I finally decided. I'm going to marry Sonny instead. I thought you'd have a decent amount of savings, but what are you talking about? Rose asked, her voice trembling in disbelief. How can you not be embarrassed, supporting a sister like that? I'd rather be with someone younger. Sonny, unlike you, listens to everything I say without question. Standing next to Sean, Sonny looked down at us with a triumphant smile. Of course I do. I've already cut ties with my parents because Sean asked me to. And I've been saving up so we can get married, Sonny said proudly. Exactly. That's why we're leaving now. I asked Sonny to wait so we could finalize things during this family meeting. Rose, if you're going to keep defending Amber, then I don't need you anymore. Sean, seemingly satisfied after saying his piece, stood up and started to leave with Sonny. Wait a moment. I couldn't let things end like this. I called out to stop Sean and Sonny. Was it fair for someone I'd just met to judge my life, my income, and even my character so harshly, and based entirely on assumptions? I hadn't expected Rose's fiancé to say such cruel things. And at first, I was too shocked to respond. When I glanced at Rose, I saw an expression of fury I had never witnessed before. Sonny, meanwhile, was still grinning beside Sean. After a few tense moments, Rose seemed to gather herself, took a deep breath, and said with icy calm, Amber is far wealthier than you. Sean burst out laughing. Come on, stop with the jokes. No way is that true. You just want me to come back, don't you? But that lie isn't going to fly. He pointed at me, his gaze filled with condescension. That look stung deeply. Even though I knew his accusations were unfounded, I couldn't help but feel a pang of self-doubt. But I somehow managed to muster a trembling voice to reply. I'm not sure how my income compares to yours, but there seems to be a misunderstanding about my work. I'm a painter. Oh please. Probably one of those starving, self-proclaimed artists. Huh, there are tons of people like that. And that old, dirty studio I saw last time. Come on. Maybe my studio is old and messy, I admitted, trying to stay composed. Then prove it. Say your name. If you're a well-known artist, someone here will recognize it, right? Sean snapped, cutting me off before I could explain further. I didn't use my real name publicly. I had built my career anonymously, sharing my work online through social media. Revealing my name here would undermine everything I'd worked for. But if staying silent meant ruining Rose's chance at happiness, I couldn't let that happen. I've been working under the name Amber Willow, I finally said, my voice quiet but steady. The room went completely still. It feels strange to say this myself, but Amber Willow is a renowned artist with over 10 million followers on social media. I've received commissions not only from within the United States, but also internationally. Famous influencers and artists proudly display my work in their homes. In fact, many fans still covet my very first painting, but that piece belongs to Rose, who was my first supporter. She carefully framed it and has it displayed in her room. I often visit to see it myself. You've got to be kidding. Amber Willow. As in the world-famous artist, Amber Willow. I realized I needed to prove my identity, and quickly pulled out a notebook, filled with sketches and notes from my past projects. No way. So the Amber Willow piece hanging in Rose's room, that was real. Yes, I bought it because I was her very first fan. Rose replied with a proud smile. I never wanted any money for it. I added, trying to clarify. But since I live at our parents' home and help care for them, Rose insisted on sending me some money every month to contribute. Amber refused to take my money outright. So I told her I was just paying to admire her work every day. Really? Then I should change my plan, he murmured. Sean's expression shifted. Sean, you're not seriously believing her, are you? You're just falling for her lies because you're a candidate for CEO, and she's desperate to tie you down. No, that's not it. I've been a fan of Amber Willow myself. I just assumed the piece in Rose's room was a replica or something. Sean snapped, suddenly defensive. As Sean's panic grew, his earlier confidence completely crumbled. Rose, watching him carefully, decided to confront him directly. Sean, are you seriously planning to marry Sunny? She seems to know quite a lot about your status as the next CEO. You must have shared plenty of details with her. This was the first I'd heard about Sean being a potential CEO, and I couldn't help but wonder if Rose was okay letting such a promising prospect go. Give me a moment to think. It's true that I might have gone too far with Amber earlier, but you've got to understand my concerns. I was worried about having an unemployed family member in my life. Having realized who I was, Sean seemed eager to change his tone and steer the conversation back toward marrying Rose. His behavior was beyond selfish. Then how do you explain openly admitting to cheating on me? At that moment, Rose laughed, as though something had clicked for her. Everyone in the room was slightly taken aback, but Rose's face turned serious as she faced Sunny. Sunny, I have some good news for you. I won't be marrying his man. You can have him all to yourself. Excuse me, that's incredibly condescending. But whatever. It's not like I needed your permission. I was going to marry him anyway. Sunny's smugness was short-lived. Rose's next words struck like a lightning bolt. That's fine, but you should know, Sean will never become CEO. Whatever grand stories he's told you, I doubt much of it is true. What? And how would you know that? You're just a regular employee at Sean's company. Don't act like you know everything. Sunny's mocking tone only made Rose's calm demeanor more striking. You're the one who doesn't understand. Sean betrayed me after proposing marriage. Do you really think he wouldn't betray you, too? Looking at Sean, it seemed he had completely lost the ability to speak. Rose's words were clearly not mistaken. Sunny, noticing Sean's expression, started to panic. Sean, what's going on? Explain yourself. You told me you were a candidate for CEO and had been a department head overseas for years. It was true. Even Rose had mentioned Sean's overseas work before. That's why I assumed he must have been highly competent. But judging from what Rose had just said, there was more to the story. Rose continued calmly. Let me lay everything out now that the engagement is off. It's true Sean worked in our company's overseas division. Sunny's face lit up with relief. See, I told you. She seemed to feel reassured by this confirmation. But Rose added sharply, he wasn't placed there as a department head. He was demoted after using company funds to fuel his obsession with overseas casinos. He was brought back to headquarters to keep a closer eye on him. What? I only found out about it a year into our relationship. But he seemed determined to change and had worked hard enough to earn my respect again, which is why I eventually agreed to marry him. Sunny, now glaring at Sean, asked with a mix of anger and disbelief, so the CEO candidate thing was a lie too? Not entirely. The offer to become a CEO candidate was originally directed at me, not him. There was an awkward pause before she continued. But Sean managed to contribute significantly to the company's sales and repaid every cent of the embezzled funds. In fact, he helped turn a significant profit. So I advocated for him to be considered for the role of CEO, as a way to give him a second chance. Wait, what? I wasn't told any of this. I thought it was because of my abilities. You really don't understand your position, do you? Who would trust a person who once misused company funds to be a CEO? I pleaded for you to have a chance to redeem yourself as my future husband. Sean, upon hearing this, sank further into despair. Had he truly believed everything was his own doing? If that was the case, his misunderstanding was beyond measure. So if you don't marry him, Sonny asked Rose, then Sean will never be more than just a regular employee. Exactly. That's why I said he will never become CEO. This is unbelievable. Don't fall for this nonsense, Sean. Call the CEO right now and clear this up. Rose, with an exasperated sigh, responded, fine, but once you hear the truth, you two need to leave this place immediately. She pulled out her smartphone and dialed the number, switching the call to speaker mode for everyone to hear. Sean froze, his panic now evident in his trembling form. His expression was so pathetic it was almost laughable. Judging from his reaction, it was clear Rose's words were entirely true. Hello, this is Rose. I hope I'm not disturbing you on your day off, but may I have a moment of your time? It's unusual for you to call on a weekend. What's going on? To be direct, Rose began, I'm calling to inform you that my engagement with Sean has been called off. I wanted to report this to you and apologize for any trouble caused in the process. The CEO paused for a moment, then responded with a chuckle. Sean, I didn't say anything because you were the one who chose him, but honestly, I think you've made the right decision. The CEO let out an audible sigh over the phone, his frustration clear even from a distance. Sean had already misused company funds once before, so we conducted a background check when his name came up as a candidate for CEO. Just earlier, we discovered he's been involved with multiple women, even while being engaged to you. It seemed his actions had not gone unnoticed by the company. You investigated him. I see. Multiple women, you say. One of those affairs is exactly what led me to call off our engagement. Given the nature of the CEO role, we had to ensure he was genuinely reformed. But Rose, your contributions to the company have been outstanding, and it's true that we were considering you as the next CEO. The sincerity in the CEO's voice reflected his respect and gratitude for Rose's efforts. Despite your dedication to supporting Sean, you didn't deserve this betrayal. If you decide to pursue legal action, we have evidence to back you up. Just let me know. The CEO's voice was gentle, and you could hear the desire to save Rose in his tone. Thank you. I believe a lawsuit is inevitable, so I'd greatly appreciate your cooperation in providing the evidence you uncovered during your investigation. Of course, and let me make it clear, Sean will be dismissed from the company. As for you, Rose, I want you to remain with us as a leading candidate for the CEO position. I understand this must be a difficult time, but the company fully supports you. Thank you very much. I'll see you at the office soon. When Rose ended the call, Sean and Sonny were left standing there, utterly speechless. Their faces betrayed the realization that they had lost everything. What did he just say? Multiple women. What is this, Sean? I only dated you because you said you were going to be the next CEO. Were you telling every woman the same thing? Sonny demanded. Sonny, it's not like that. The CEO has a habit of exaggerating. What am I supposed to believe now? You can't hold down a job or a relationship. What use could anyone have for you? Sonny spat. What? After everything I bought for you, this is how you talk to me? You only enjoyed that lifestyle because I worked hard for it. Pay me back for all the money I've spent on you. Sean shouted, his anger boiling over. Hearing Sean demand repayment from a younger woman was pathetic, to say the least. And just as Sonny said, Sean had never been able to make even one of his girlfriends happy. And now, even after being given a second chance by the company he had betrayed, he was betraying them again in a different way. Sonny, in fact, had never stayed with Sean for who he was. She had only been with him because he spent money to entertain her. Sean was seriously misunderstanding things. Watching all this unfold was painful. Sean, do you really think Sonny was ever genuinely in love with you? Rose asked calmly, looking at him with pity. Still in denial, Sean glanced at Rose with uncertainty. But Sonny always did whatever I asked. She cut ties with her family when I told her to, and she even said she wanted to have a baby with me. Oh, you have a child? Rose inquired, her tone tinged with mockery. Realizing his mistake, Sean hesitated before answering. Well, yes, I mean, we talked about it because you were never interested in the idea, Rose. Sonny burst out laughing, her derision clear as she looked down at Sean. Sean couldn't even begin to understand why Sonny was laughing so much. Are you seriously this stupid? Did you really think I wanted to marry you out of love? God, no. Then, everything you said was a lie. What about the baby? I even paid for all the medical expenses, Sean exclaimed, his voice tinged with desperation. Of course it was all fake, you idiot. I just wanted to milk you for every penny I could. That money, gone. I spent it all ages ago, Sonny said with a smug grin. It was clear now. Sean and Sonny had been deceiving each other, each trying to use the other for their own benefit. Sonny had likely fabricated the story about a child to extort money from Sean. The weight of losing everything, the facade of a successful career, the illusion of genuine relationships, hit Sean like a tidal wave. You tricked me. This is marriage fraud. Do you even realize that? Sonny continued with an exasperated expression. Maybe you're right, but if you're not going to be the next CEO, I don't have any reason to stick around. You're useless to me now. I'm leaving. Sonny, wait. I still have what it takes to become CEO. Sean pleaded, crawling on the floor after her a pathetic sight. You have nothing left, Sean. The family you could have cherished, the position you could have earned, the job you could have excelled in, it's all gone because of you. Both Sean and Sonny had strayed so far from basic human decency that they seemed utterly lost. As Sonny stormed out, she slapped Sean across the face, glaring at everyone in the room before leaving without another word. After she left, Sean shuffled over to Rose, starting his attempt at an apology. Rose, listen, I know I've made mistakes. I didn't have any proper relationships before, so I thought I needed to gain more experience with different women before settling down. The audacity of his excuse sent a shiver through both Rose and me. Sean clearly intended to justify his infidelity before marriage. You know what they say, loving multiple people gives you emotional balance, right? I was just spreading my feelings around. Honestly, you should thank me for managing it all so well. What? Rose's voice was barely audible, her disbelief palpable. But Rose, you're the one I truly love. Why else would I have arranged this family meeting? That's proof of my sincerity, isn't it? Sean's self-serving attempt to frame himself as a victim only confirmed how little he had learned. Stop acting like you're doing me some kind of favor, Rose shot back, her voice steady but firm. I've been nothing but honest and committed to you. Even the CEO, despite his doubts, considered you for a leadership position because he saw potential in you. But after trampling on everyone's trust, you expect gratitude. Unbelievable. Unable to handle Rose's cutting truth, Sean lashed out again. I've worked hard to make up for my mistakes. That's the bare minimum, Sean. You should have been working hard while taking responsibility for your actions. Rose countered sharply, and she was absolutely right. Despite being given chances to redeem himself, Sean had deluded himself into believing his survival was due solely to his own abilities, disregarding the goodwill of those around him. Amber, you understand, don't you? Sean turned to me with a sly grin, his tone shifting to manipulative. If I marry Rose, I can use my international experience to help you sell your artwork to a global market. Imagine how rich you'll become. That's happiness, isn't it? Sean, please stop. I create art for people who need it, for those who tell me it brings them comfort. It's not about money, I said, my voice raised in frustration. I had had enough of his selfishness. I don't care who buys my art, I care about why they buy it. And after how you've hurt Rose, you have no right to involve yourself in anything I create. My words must have struck a nerve because Sean's composure cracked. He began shouting again, his tone venomous. Don't get cocky. You're just some social media famous nobody. In the real world, you're nothing but a socially inept loser who can't even get married. That's enough. The voice came from Ellie, who had been silent until now. She stood and addressed Sean with a rare, stern authority. I later learned from Mom that Ellie had fainted briefly earlier, overwhelmed by the revelations of Sean's embezzlement and infidelity. But now she was resolute. I've never had a husband, but I raised you to be someone I could be proud of. All I wanted was for you to be happy. And now, after finally hearing talk of marriage, this is what you bring to me. Enough is enough, Sean. Mom, wait, please. Sean stammered, panicking, as the weight of Ellie's words began to sink in. I'm cutting ties with you today. I can't believe you followed the same path as your father. But this is reality. Accept it and atone for your actions. Wait, Mom, don't leave me alone. You can't really cut ties with me, can you? Sean, still in shock from his mother's words, was interrupted by my dad, who entered the room and took control of the situation. Sean, enough. I won't let you marry Rose. You're the kind of person who hurts others and feels nothing. Stay away from Rose for the rest of your life. Don't ever show your face to her again. For the first time, Dad, who had remained silent until now, stood before Sean with an anger I had never seen before. I could see Dad's fists trembling, and it broke my heart. I knew he had been looking forward to this day, only to have it end in such a way. Please wait. I've realized my mistake. Today I've come to understand how important Rose is to me. At this point, Sean tried to claim he still cared for Rose. Rose sighed deeply at his words and turned her face away, unable to bear his pathetic attempt at redemption. Dad, hearing Sean's shameless words, grew even angrier. None of your excuses matter. Dad's voice raised, shaking with fury. Had I ever seen Dad so dependable and enraged before? Leave here immediately. Otherwise, I might just lose control and punch you. Dad had never been so furious, having witnessed his daughters being insulted. I had never heard him shout like that before. Seeing Dad like this, Sean began trembling, tears streaming down his face. Perhaps he couldn't believe things weren't going his way. For some reason, he acted as though he were the victim. It was pathetic how he kept making excuses despite knowing nothing could change now. Ellie, trying to maintain composure, apologized to all of us and made Sean apologize as well before dispersing the meeting. We stood there, frozen for a while, stunned by the storm of events that had just unfolded. This kind of disastrous family meeting felt like something out of a novel, something we never imagined would happen. Rose and Sean broke off their engagement, and Sean was required to pay a settlement fee. Thanks to a background check conducted by the CEO, several women who had been deceived by him came forward with their contact details. These women shared their information with each other and collectively demanded a settlement fee from Sean. Regarding my name as an artist mentioned during the family meeting, I made sure to get Sonny's agreement not to bring it up again. It was revealed that Sean had been obsessed with gambling in the past and, even after returning to America, continued to gamble excessively. He had accrued substantial debts. He had called me unemployed, yet he himself was buried in debt. Sean had targeted wealthy women, particularly those in high positions at companies, and manipulated them into paying off his gambling debts under false pretenses. The total debt was over $1 M, and he had convinced these women to sever ties with their families, using marriage as a tool to manipulate them. As a result, these women lost their homes and their families. Later, I learned from Ellie that Sean's father had also fallen into gambling and had tried to earn money by engaging with multiple women. This behavior led to the divorce right after Sean was born. The story that Sean's father had passed away was a lie. In reality, it was concealed because Sean feared revealing the truth would end his potential marriage. Sean, now drowning in debts and forced to pay multiple settlement fees to the women he deceived, had been fired from the company. He was facing a lawsuit for embezzling company funds to support his gambling habits. The settlement fees for the marriage fraud would not be the end of his problems. Eventually, Sean was charged with embezzlement and was sentenced to prison. Had he faced Rose, the company, and grown as a person, none of this would have happened. Of course, he was disowned by Ellie, and he would now walk a lonely path for the rest of his life. With his prison sentence, finding a job would be impossible, and he would be stuck paying the settlement fees with a meager income. A harsh life awaited him, that much was certain. After everything that happened, I couldn't help but feel as though my profession had been belittled, and my spirits were low. However, I also began to realize that, in a way, it was for the best that Rose was able to break up with Sean because of this incident. As the CEO had discussed with Rose, she was appointed as the next company president, being the first female president. She was receiving a lot of expectations. Rose was dedicated to creating a company that would be more comfortable for women to work in, focusing on reforms for maternity and paternity leave, and aiming to make menstrual leave more widely available. As a result, last year, the number of female applicants tripled compared to the previous year, and Rose was pleased to see that the company had gained more talented employees. She also mentioned that the company's revenue had increased, though Dad and Mom had been exhausted by everything that had happened. Watching her work so hard and move forward with determination, they too began to look ahead. After retiring, they had been staying at home, but recently, they started taking trips together as a couple. As for me, this incident made me realize I wanted to increase my interactions with others, so I decided to attend a cooking class. While I already knew how to cook, I started the classes with the desire for Dad and Mom to experience more types of food. It was there that I met a man in his 40s, and we are now dating. He is patient with me, understanding my difficulty with communication, and through the cooking classes, we have gradually grown closer. After the whole Sean incident, I feared that revealing my profession would make him see me differently, so I kept it hidden for a while. Now I am grateful to be in a relationship with someone who accepts me for who I am, and I cherish this newfound happiness.